From the Yeti of the snow-peaked Himalayas to the Almasty of Russia and the Sasquatch of the western USA. Every culture has a name for it, but this series isn't about hunting for Bigfoot. It's about hunting for answers.
Bigfoot believers claim they have evidence to support its existence. The problem is that none of it has ever been properly substantiated. But can science, cutting-edge science, actually sort out fact from fiction? Well, a professor of genetics at Oxford University is determined to find out, and I'm going to help him.
That Oxford professor, Brian Sykes, has launched a unique project, testing samples of Bigfoot hair from all over the world.
We will definitely be able to identify the species origin of any sample. So, if there's anything really exciting, we will find it.
I'll be going in search of Sasquatch in America's Pacific Northwest and taking on the mystery of the Almasty in Russia. But this week, I'm in the home of the Yeti, the Himalayas, where the world's most famous climber had a terrifying encounter.
This huge being is coming and killing me or eating me.
I'll be visiting Everest Base Camp, where an extraordinary photograph started our obsession.
The Sherpas knew exactly what they were. Yeti footprints.
From a mystery creature hidden for 40 years to a Yeti shot by Nazis in the 1930s. Our tests reveal something spectacular.
It's a massively important result, isn't it?
That may well be the biological basis for the Yeti legend.
We're launching the biggest and most comprehensive DNA analysis of Bigfoot ever attempted. It's Judgment Day for the Yeti. Stretching 1,500 miles from Ladakh through Nepal, Tibet and Bhutan, the Himalayas is the birthplace of the Yeti. Our challenge is to unpack the various theories that support and fuel the Yeti legend. Is it a bear? Could it possibly be some kind of giant ape? Could it even be some kind of ancient hominid, a member of the human family like Neanderthals that were thought to be extinct? Or could it be a hoax? From the British diplomat who first heard stories of wild men in 1832, to the journalist who coined the phrase abominable snowman in 1921, and the photograph that started our obsession in 1951. Descriptions of the Yeti vary. It walks on 2 feet like a human or another ape. It is tall, 5 to 9 feet. Heavy, 400 to 900 pounds. Hairy, from red-brown to beige to almost white. But sightings are rare, and evidence is scant. Now, though, a top international scientist is taking it on. Oxford University's Professor Brian Sykes is one of the world's foremost geneticists and a true scientific pioneer. The first man ever to recover DNA from ancient human bone. Now he's launched the most ambitious Bigfoot DNA analysis the world has ever seen. the Oxford-Lausanne Collateral Hominid Project, and is testing so-called Yeti hair from all over the Himalayas. As a vet and a biologist, I leapt at the chance to get involved in Brian's project. But I wonder why such a reputable scientist is entering the murky world of Bigfoot, one that serious academics have steered well clear of for decades. Hi, Brian.
Mark,
How are
hi.
you? Good to see you.
And you?
It looks like the postman's been.
Yes.
Again. You must have thought about the people who, historically, eminent people in their field, whose credentials and reputations utterly trashed by getting involved in this weird Bigfoot world.
Yeah.
Did that not worry the pants off you?
No. I'm really doing it because I'm curious. I want to know the answer, and that should be the basis for any scientific investigation. I'm a little bit, what shall I say, irritated by claims from cryptozoologists that science has rejected them. Science doesn't accept or reject anything. What it does is find out about the world by looking at the evidence. Show me the evidence, and I'll examine it.
While Sykes begins his tests on the best and most credible Himalayan hair samples, I'm travelling nearly 5,000 miles to Nepal, gateway to the highest mountain range in the world, the Himalayas.
Just look around you. This is proper mountain country. It's so cool to be here.
My eventual destination is Everest Base Camp. But on the way up there, I want to get a sense of what the people of the Himalayas really think about the Yeti. My first stop is Namche Bazaar, 12,000 feet high, capital of the Sherpa people. The Sherpas, inhabitants of the Himalayas for over 4 centuries, are supremely well adapted to life at high altitude. The Yeti is an integral part of their world. And Namche resident Shona has a vivid tale to tell. He witnessed a Yeti attack near here 50 years ago.
That time I was, I think 16 to 17 year old, and we are summer high up, we're grazing Zopjo.
Zopjo is the cross between the yak and the cow.
Yes, and one night we got a big noise and very strong whistling, and we are really scared. Now is Yeti going to kill us?
Were you in a tent?
Cave.
In a cave?
Rock cave.
In a rock cave?
Yeah.
So in the morning, what did you find?
2 Zopjo was killed from the Yeti.
Okay.
Yeah, and all eat it.
And the bones as well?
Bone is all gone. No bone, no meat. Only left some shit and some tasted, and all meat is gone.
Everything?
Everything gone.
Describe to me what the Yeti actually looks like.
Like human.
And walks on 2 legs.
2 legs, yeah, like people. And the color is more dark brown. But they say the face is white.
Shona's final thought was not about the Yeti's violence, though, but its spirituality.
Yeti is one of the animal of God. God controls the Yeti, God controls for the people, God controls for the sickness.
As I head further up the mountain towards Everest Base Camp, I can't get Shona's phrase out of my head. The Yeti is an animal of God. Everyone I met, including our own team of Sherpas, seemed to share this powerful faith in the Yeti's existence.
I'm reasonably fit, but I'm absolutely knackered. The air is so thin, even here, 12,000 feet.
Every part of the Himalayas has its own Bigfoot legend. East of Nepal, in the remote mountain kingdom of Bhutan, they call it the Migu. And 800 miles away in the western Himalayas, in Ladakh, it's called Tengmo. Brian's first sample donor, French adventurer Christophe Hagenmuller, came face to face with one in 2003. The hair sample is said to have come from a Tengmo shot and killed in the early 1970s. For Hagenmuller, it all began with a surprise encounter in the mountains.
One day I saw a person sitting beside a horse. So I asked him if everything was okay, and the guy answered me that it was almost okay, but it had fallen from the horse and couldn't go back home. I helped him getting again on his horse, and we ride together to his house. He invited me for a day or two, where we started discussing. I told him that I was looking for snow leopard and other creatures, and he told me that he would have something more interesting to show me. He knew that a hunter had killed a strange creature, and he thought he could show me the creature. I had to promise I would never reveal the place where I would travel with them and see the animal. I would travel 4 days, and to be honest, I'm not even sure I would find the village again. We camped there, and one morning I was asked to come with them, and we saw the hunter who had killed the animal. The animal was killed, of course, 30 years ago. It was stuffed. The first thing that came to my mind was a mix of a wolf and a bear. The animal was mid-sized, I would say, like a small human, long fur. The color was brown. It has a big mouth with large teeth. For him, it was a Tengmo period. I told him, it's probably a bear, what do you think of? And the guy told me, it's definitely not a bear. I cannot be confused because I'm a hunter, I've killed maybe 10 or 15 bears, and I'm sure it is not a bear. I asked him whether I could take some pieces of fur, and the guy hesitated, but again said, what, okay. That's how I brought the fur back in Europe when coming back home.
Hagenmuller kept that piece of fur for 10 years. And when he heard about Brian's project, sent it to him for testing.
The fact is that hair is very resilient. You can clean any suggestion of contamination from the surface of a hair without damaging the DNA that lies within. And this is something we've only known in the past couple of years.
Inside the tough keratin shell of the Hagenmuller hairs is the animal's DNA. And soon, this mystery creature will give up its identity. A wolf? A bear? Or perhaps the answer to the Yeti legend itself. For the people of the Himalayas, the Yeti has been part of their culture for centuries. For the West, though, our obsession has a precise starting point. It was November 1951. And it all began with a photograph. The man who took that photograph was 44-year-old British mountaineer Eric Shipton, a Himalaya veteran who'd put together a small expedition that year that included a younger climber eager for more experience. Edmund Hillary, the future conqueror of Everest.
Shipton, Hillary and the others weren't here looking for the Yeti, but they were here looking for something almost as elusive back in the early 1950s. For 30 years, the best climbers in the world had been trying to find a manageable route to the tallest mountain on Earth, Everest. And it's just over there. You can just see the top of Lhotse, which is the mountain nearer us. If it was a cloudless sky, beyond it you would just see the summit of Everest itself. And it's exactly the view Shipton would have got. It's only 15 kilometres away, but to get to just the base camp of Everest, it's a grueling 5-day walk.
Okay, call me lazy, but there'll be no 5-day walk for me. Before I fly up there though, I need a quick lesson as we're taking emergency oxygen with us. We may need it. At 18,000 feet, the air at base camp is seriously thin.
So how does this work? Take me through it.
The team and I are not fully acclimatized to high altitude, so to avoid getting seriously ill, we can only spend a few hours up at base camp. Shipton's team, of course, did it on foot, allowing their bodies to acclimatise slowly to less oxygen, as they sought out that elusive route to the world's highest mountain. By 1951, climbers from all over the world had spent 30 years trying to conquer Everest. All their attempts had been from the north, in Tibet, and all had failed at the cost of a dozen lives. Shipton's team were the first to try to find a new route from the south through Nepal, the route that 2 years later would take Hillary to the top.
I am always excited flying in helicopters anywhere in the world, and this has got to be the best place to fly in a helicopter.
Base camp wasn't here in Shipton's day, of course, but this ragged collection of tents on a moon-like sea of boulders sits close to where he took his remarkable photograph over 60 years ago.
It was late in the afternoon on November the 8th, 1951, and Shipton and the expedition's doctor, Michael Ward, were working on a glacier a couple of miles from here. And then suddenly they came across a set of huge footprints that went away from them down the glacier, and it left them completely mystified.
The mystery footprints were about 12 inches long and 5 inches wide. Shipton even had the presence of mind to use his own ice axe to give a sense of scale.
To find any footprints at such high altitude was simply inexplicable, so high above the tree line and so high above any human habitation. They didn't look like the footprints of a man, a bear or a yak, the only animals that could even conceivably be on a glacier at this altitude. But the Sherpas knew exactly what they were. Yeti footprints.
Another member of the Shipton team, Tom Bourdelon, saw the footprints a few hours later. And when he wrote home that night, he used a memorable phrase. The abominable snowman is not a myth. Shipton's picture made headlines around the world. But what had made the prints? Some said bear, others monkey. Today, of course, there'd be cries of hoax. But back in the 50s, respectable gentleman adventurers like Shipton and team were considered above reproach. Shipton's photograph marked a new beginning, and Yeti mania was born. There have always been skeptics, of course. One theory is that the shortage of oxygen at high altitude is enough to bring on all kinds of fantasy visions. And I was about to get my own taste of the effects of altitude. It's fairly clear up here, but it's become fog-bound lower down, and we've just heard that the helicopter can't fly up to get us.
It's too dangerous for us to stay up here overnight because we're not acclimatised to this height. So we have to get as low down as possible. So what's facing us now is the best part of a 7-hour hike from base camp to try and get down to an area where potentially a helicopter could pick us up, or we might be able to kit down somewhere for the night. But as the sun's gone, it's got colder and colder and colder. So we've got to get on, we've got to move on.
We've been here most of the day now and are all suffering early symptoms of altitude sickness. It kills people up here every year, and the only treatment is to get lower.
We've been going for about 20 minutes. Most of it is kind of downhill. But all of us, the whole team, have got pounding headaches now. Jesus.
The headaches mean our brains are getting critically short of oxygen. Our director took it pretty hard. And with my veterinary background, I know that any of us could collapse at any moment.
I still see base camp.
The professor, meanwhile, is on a somewhat less stressful mission to the European Alps. He's en route to Bolzano in the mountains of South Tyrol in northern Italy. And he's come here to take hair samples from perhaps the most extraordinary so-called Yeti in the world. It was shot at high altitude near a snowy cave in the remotest part of the Tibetan Himalayas 75 years ago. The man who killed it, 28-year-old German adventurer Ernst Schaefer, was leading a notorious Nazi expedition, Operation Tibet. He and his team hadn't come to kill Yetis, though. They arrived in spring 1938 with orders from the SS to use racial science to prove a crackpot Nazi theory that the German Aryan race had its origins in the Himalayas. These images become really chilling when you know that the scientist making these face casts was later jailed for experiments he carried out at Auschwitz. Schaefer brought his Yeti back in 1939 when the expedition returned to Germany and had it stuffed. As for what it really is, no one has ever known, as it's never been tested until now.
I've seen a lot of specimens during this project. This has to take the prize for the strangest. The lower jaw seems to be made of clay. The teeth look very peculiar, as if they've been inserted into the clay the wrong way round, with the roots showing. I'm digging into the underfur now because sunlight will destroy DNA over the years. So I'm going to go in here and take my sample.
When Schaefer died, his widow gave the Nazi Yeti to one of the legendary figures of modern climbing.
Hello,
Hello again.
See you again.
See you again.
Please come.
Reinhold Messner. She knew he'd be interested in having it, because Messner has his own extraordinary Yeti tale to tell. He's been called the greatest climber in history. Reinhold Messner was the first man to ascend Everest without oxygen, the first to conquer all the world's 8,000-metre peaks, losing 8 toes to frostbite in the process. And in 1986, Messner had an extraordinary Yeti encounter. He was alone, at high altitude, in the Tibetan Himalayas.
Late was beginning to be dark, and I was hoping maybe to find a small village, hoping to get some food, but there was no place. So I crossed a huge river. And I had to be very careful because I knew if the water would wash me away, I would be gone. And for me, crossing rivers is not so easy because I lost my toes. And quite immediately after starting again, I could see a strange figure in the woods, in the dark. It was a huge being. I could not either say it was an animal, a human being, or something else. I myself asked me, you have really seen something, or it was only an imagination? But when I found the footprints, I knew there was some real. And I could see in the mud footprints exactly like the Shipton photographs.
His encounter had such an impact on Messner that he set out to resolve the Yeti mystery once and for all.
I went to many local Tibetans and I asked them all the same questions. How you call in your homeland, in the eastern part of Tibet, what we call and what the tourists are calling Yeti in Nepal. And they all answered immediately, Chemo. And so I know I have seen the animal which is in reality the base of the Yeti legend.
So the Yeti of Nepal and the Migu of Bhutan was the Chemo of Tibet. Years of research across the Himalayas finally convinced Messner that it was actually a bear, but not as we know it. A special bear, larger than a regular bear, fiercer, and adapted to high altitude.
There is, for me, no 1% of doubt that the Yeti legend is based on this special bear. The local people are speaking about a huge, huge being, bigger than a human being. They speak about a hairy figure, a stinky figure, going on 4 legs, going on 2 legs. It's a different kind of a bear. It looks different because it's living in a different habitat.
It seems to chime with what the locals think. Both the Ladakh hunter and Shona in Nepal felt that what they encountered didn't look like a regular bear. Messner also has a theory that Shipton photographed the double step of one of these special bears, a rear paw landing in the print already made by a front paw, creating a wide, deep impression accentuated by snowmelt. But could any of Nepal's 3 bear species, even special versions of them, possibly survive at high altitude? Sloth bears aren't seen above 5,000 feet. Black bears don't go above 12,000. But Himalayan brown bears roam as high as 18,000 feet. The same altitude as Shipton's photograph and Messner's encounter. For Brian, it all has the whiff of unfinished business. In 2001, Channel 4 funded an expedition to the remote mountain kingdom of Bhutan in search of their local Bigfoot, the Migu. A younger Brian Sykes was brought in to test the hair samples that came back. Some of them proved to be bears, but one sample yielded no clear result and remained a mystery. It was collected by the expedition biologist when he was taken to a remote part of the kingdom by one of the king's royal Migu hunters to a hollow tree said to be a favoured den of the creature.
That's good. That is very good.
At the time, Brian was unable to identify the species origin of the mystery hair. But now, a little older and a lot wiser, with more sophisticated DNA techniques at his fingertips, he's retesting that same hair. So the 2001 Bhutan sample joins the Nazi and Ladakh hairs, covering between them the whole of the Himalayas. As for me, I'm back in Kathmandu, a blissful 13,000 feet lower than base camp.
Lots more oxygen, lots more noise, lots more mayhem, total chaos.
When Edmund Hillary conquered Everest in 1953, he started a tradition. Those who've reached the high Himalayas sign a Yeti foot. I think we deserve it.
Immortalised forever, up with the best of them. This is a trip we definitely won't forget.
Now I'm on the move again, travelling over 7,000 miles across the Atlantic. To Montana in the western USA, where I'm going to put Messner's double-step theory to the test.
I'm on my way to meet a grizzly bear called Brutus, who weighs in at a neat ½ a ton.
America may seem a long way to come, but there are very few bears in the world that I could work with safely. Brutus is an American grizzly, the same species as the brown bears in the Himalayas, and I want to use his feet to try to recreate the Shipton print. Casey Anderson is a zoologist who's raised Brutus since birth. They're less trainer and animal, more best buddies.
So how old is Brutus?
He's 11.
Really?
Yeah, and a grizzly bear in his situation can live to be 40. So he's got a lot of A lot of years ahead of him.
We're making a trackway to walk Brutus through and test Messner's double-step theory. Brutus may look cute, but I'm very aware that this is an 800-pound wild animal who could do us all serious damage in the blink of an eye.
What's the impression looking like?
He's not compressing it as much as I thought he would. He obviously quite likes it, though.
Second time lucky, we hope.
Come on, Mr. Brutus. All the way through. Good boy, good boy.
Good lad, that's jackpot time.
We got it. A perfect double step.
Yeah, those are good.
That's exactly what we want.
It's the first time I've cast a footprint, and while the plaster sets, I want to put myself in Messner's shoes. See if I can imagine how a big bear in low light could appear as a Yeti.
Look what he just did to the tree down there. He is, I mean, he's mighty impressive when he gets up on 2 feet, isn't he? I mean, mighty impressive. When you read Messner's account, he'd been out all day, it was getting dark, and then he sees this, standing on 2 legs. Your whole brain is going to say, weird person kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily bear isn't going to be the first thing that goes through your head, is it?
No, and you would, the last thing you expect to see is any animal standing up like that. So they instantaneously go to something else.
So you can absolutely imagine how Messner convinced himself in that moment that he had seen a Bigfoot of some description.
Yeah, I think.
Really dim light levels, looking through foliage, you could believe that was a Yeti.
For sure.
A Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
So,
all the toes, that big pad, the claws, that looks pretty dang good.
That's not bad, is it?
It's a big foot.
That's a big.
Whether it's a Bigfoot or not.
That is a big. That's not bad, is it?
No, that's really good.
That's not bad. Now, if you saw that in a museum, and it was in amongst a collection of Bigfoot evidence, you could convince yourself, couldn't you?
Certainly.
The match between the prints is remarkable. I feel like I'm walking in everyone's footsteps. Brutus's, Shipton's, Messner's, the Yetis. The special bear hypothesis begins to look compelling. Question is, will Brian's tests back it up? They're now complete, and I'm on my way to hear the results. He's told me to expect a big surprise. It's results day, and my journey has come full circle. From Everest Base Camp to the Italian Alps and the American West. Now I'm back in the Shires of England, on my way to meet Brian. So far, all the evidence that I've managed to pull together definitely points towards the Yeti being some kind of bear, but it's not proof, and that's the thing about Brian's DNA results. They are definitive. We're meeting at one of the world's great collections of stuffed animals, the Natural History Museum's site at Tring.
Oh, yeah, good to see you, good to see you.
First came disappointment. That other stuffed creature, Messner's Nazi Yeti, yielded no result. The DNA probably destroyed by taxidermy chemicals. Then came a surprise. The Ladakh and Bhutan results were exactly the same, and not the species I was expecting.
I assume you're going to tell me it's a brown bear.
Well, no. It wasn't a sloth bear, it wasn't a black bear, and it wasn't a brown bear. The DNA result is a perfect match with a polar bear. Ursus maritimus, a polar bear. A polar bear.
You're having a laugh.
No?
Really?
No.
You presumably checked and double-checked?
Yes, all done.
I mean, because it
was very unusual, so we did double-check it. But it's not even as straightforward as that. It isn't a modern polar bear. It matches an ancient polar bear. DNA taken from the jawbone of a polar bear that died at least 40,000 years ago.
It's an extraordinary and unexpected result. 2 samples, one from Bhutan, the other from Ladakh, 800 miles away, and both are a match to an ancient polar bear jawbone found in Svalbard, Norway in 2004. Bear genetics is notoriously complex, and Brian's result isn't easy to interpret. Could the Ladakh-Bhutan creature be an actual polar bear? Well, almost certainly not. The Ladakh animal doesn't look like one, and the Himalayas couldn't support the marine diet of a polar bear either. There's another possibility. The Svalbard jawbone is from the Pleistocene era, when some experts believe polar bears first became a separate species from brown bears. Could the Ladakh-Bhutan bear be descended from a common ancestor, close to the point when the 2 species diverged? Well, it is possible, but Brian favours another theory.
The DNA was a polar bear, so I think the probable explanation is that that animal was a hybrid between a polar bear and a brown bear. They're known to hybridize quite well. The exact timing of the split between the 2 is controversial. Some people think that the polar bears and brown bears never really separated into their own species.
We know that mating takes place between brown bears and polar bears today, where the 2 species overlap in the Arctic North. This hybridization may have been going on for thousands of years, and hybrids, like this one in Tring, often look unusual, combining traits of both species.
Maybe always, when a Yeti is seen, it's actually one of these hybrid bears, because they're not behaving like a normal bear. Polar bears hunt humans, so perhaps these hybrid bears in the Himalayas do that too, and that would add to its reputation and the fear that everybody has of the Yeti.
I find myself thinking back to the attack on Shona's animals, to the fear felt by the hunter in Ladakh, and to the encounter that terrified Messner. The Tibetans perhaps knew it all along. A new translation of this 300-year-old manuscript reads, "The Yeti is a variety of bear, living in inhospitable, mountainous areas."
It's a massively important result, isn't it?
It's a massively important result as far as bears and hybridization goes, but I think it's even more important as a result as to the identity of the Yeti. That if we do have a bear there which has different character to the regular bears in the Himalayas, because of the polar bear DNA in their genome, then that may well be the biological basis for the Yeti legend throughout the Himalayas.
And they're probably there now.
Yes, they're probably there now.
It's a bold theory, and Brian's already doing more work on the science. But his result certainly gives the world of bear genetics something to chew on, as well as marking a personal high point.
One of the great thrills of doing research is that you see things that no one has seen in the whole history of the world. And when that sequence came back from the lab, matching it to an ancient polar bear, I was the first person in the world to find that out, to know that. That's why I've done it. That's why I'm a scientist.
To be honest, when I first set out on this project with Brian, I had serious worries and concerns it might end up some kind of wild Yeti chase. But Brian has pulled it out of the bag. He has made a really important scientific discovery, and I can't help think that it would be just so cool if Eric Shipton was here and I could share this with him, because in the 60 years since his photographs and the hundreds of years since the Yeti legend began, no one has come even close to providing a scientific explanation for the biological basis of the Yeti. Yet that is exactly what Brian has achieved, and he's very modest about it, but you know, I cannot overstate what a massive achievement that is. And it will certainly change the way people think about the Yeti forever.
There's a good chance of finding one of these alive in the Himalayas. There must be more of them.
Next, I'm in the USA, where I'll meet the so-called Sasquatch killer, visit America's greatest Bigfoot hotspot, and immerse myself in the wild world of Bigfootology.
I heard that.
Did you hear that? They're coming.
They're coming here.
Yeah, they're coming. It's feeding time.